fall Chinook setting themselves apart from all the other Chinook that we get to luckily fish from spring, summer, depending on where you're at, into the fall, and that is purely their size. Fall Chinook, late to midsummer Chinook as well, are known for their over average size. And I'm not talking over average for fall, I'm talking over average when it comes to comparing them to the coveted, most fatty contented fish, the spring Chinook. Everybody loves catching springers. It's an amazing time of year to get out there. It's a ton of fun. But the spring Chinook have that amazing fat content. And why do they have that fat content? Because they are traveling extremely far up the river system. And if you've ever watched how salmon travel up the river system, and I'm not saying all spring Chinook go thousands of miles or anything like that, but spring Chinook take a lot longer to travel up the river system than fall Chinook do. That's why they have that amazing fat content, so they can hold on to that fat throughout their journey. If you've ever watched a fall Chinook run up the river, just look at the dam counts. In the spring, you have 3,000 to 4,000 a day coming over, 5,000 a day, 6,000, maybe up to 7 or 8. Maybe on amazing run years, you're looking at 7 or 8,000 spring Chinook coming over the dam at Bonneville. But if you're looking at fall Chinook, you'll see up into the 40,000s. And why is that? Because fall Chinook have a lot less time to get up to their spawning grounds to spawn. All of these fish are spawning at the exact same time. Spring, summer, and fall Chinook all spawn relatively around the same time, and they start throughout the year at different points. But fall Chinook remain in that ocean a lot longer. Yes, they don't have the fat content that springers do, but they have the size. Welcome back to another Walking on Water tutorial. In this video, I'm going to tell you my top 3 things that I wish I knew before fall Chinook fishing. Let's get right into it. Like I said in the intro, these fish all start out, as babies way upriver, but they make their way down to the ocean where they spend a couple years getting big, packing on food, and getting ready to make that long journey back up the river so we can have an opportunity to catch fish in the future. But we have an opportunity to catch them as they're running back up the river systems, as well as in the oceans, in the bay, and then the river system. There's so many different fisheries for these fish because they're traveling such a vast amount of distance. And so things change and vary as they start to move up the river. So the number one thing that I want to go over and discuss, and I'll show you via my computer how to access some of this information. It's super simple and super easy, is where are the fish at certain points throughout the year. Season opens up in August. Where are those fish at in August? You're looking to go fishing in September. Where are those fish located in September? Okay, I found where they're located in September via this information right here. 2024 adult salmon counts. And as you can see here, we've referenced Bonneville Dam a ton. Right here at the top, you can see all the species of fish that they are tracking coming over the dam. We've had 127,000 steelhead and 406,000 Chinook year to date 2024 come over that dam. But this is a key piece of information, a resource. So when you guys are getting ready to go out for a trip and you're planning a trip, let's say you want to fish above the Dalles. Okay, you can see over here on the left, it shows a date, 8:30, 8:31, 9:01, 9:02, 9:03, 9:04. You had 9,000, 10,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 8,400 a day coming over. So you know if you're fishing above Dalles Dam, you're going to be in the fish. Then it comes down to understanding flows as well as understanding what to utilize in that fishery so you can be successful. Now, if we want to scroll down a little ways and look at a different dam, I'm going to be leaving on my trip to go to Lower Granite Dam, above Lower Granite Dam on the Snake River. As you can see, 500, 965, 1,000, 930. I know there's that many fish there. It's not going to be as hot as it will be above the Dalles Dam, But those fish are moving upriver. If you look at the dams above Bonneville Dam, they're all starting to get a lot more numbers because that big mass, those huge masses of fall Chinook are flying up the river, and they are eventually going to hit your local area that you're wanting to fish. And you're never going to know that unless you actually look and see this information. This is a very valuable tool to utilize, and it's a fun tool to see how many fish came over the day before, so you can try to predict what you're in for as far as hookups and fishing and so on and so forth that day. This is a key piece of information, you guys. You definitely need to be utilizing it. That is one of the most important parts of any type of Chinook fishing, steelhead fishing, so on and so forth on some of these rivers in the Pacific Northwest. But if you're pertaining to the Columbia River, then that is an amazing resource to use. If you're talking about, let's say, the Main Umpqua River down in Oregon, that's where a lot of local knowledge comes into play. You have these communities around fishing. You kind of understand the seasons of when these fish are coming in. If you're looking at the Columbia River dam counts and you're seeing that first dam on the list is getting fish, I can bet you that down south, those river systems are getting fish as well, if not have already had fish, aka the Rogue, the Main Umpqua River, leading up into the North and South Umpqua Rivers. So these are amazing tools to help you stay on the fish, understand where they're at, not blow a bunch of money by getting down to the water and not having fish available to be caught, or if the season isn't even underway yet because there's just a lack of fish in the river systems. Always be checking your dam counts. If you don't have a dam count tracker on your river system, local knowledge, calling bait and tackle shops, booking a guided trip, so on and so forth, so you can understand better when those fish are going to be in those river systems. That is one of my first things that I wanted to discuss, because without understanding where those fish are actually at, you don't know if the fish are there. It's a waste of time unless you actually know. So do your research ahead of time. Make sure you know if there's fish in the river that you're going to fish. Which brings me into my number 2 thing that I wish that I knew before fall Chinook fishing, and that is understanding what flows do to fall Chinook just because they are traveling up the river systems so fast. Now, when you have low water, fish tend to like to shoot upriver even faster. Now, let's talk about the Snake River and the confluence of the Clearwater for a second. This is a prime example of conditions affecting how these fish react and maneuver themselves up the river, especially when they're presented with a choice of either going up the Snake River or going up the Clearwater River. Hopefully, this example shed some light on what that actually does. The Snake River flows down like so, and the Clearwater flows down to it like this. So right in the bend, the Clearwater River is hitting the Snake River. That's where the confluence is. The Snake River runs colder than the Clearwater River. That provides a nice bubble pocket of water so these fish can mill around, hang out before they make their final decision, aka it's probably already instinctually ingrained in their head which way they're going, but they do hang out in that specific location. So in my mind, they are awaiting a period to see when either the water cools down or what the flows are doing so they can make their next move upriver. And so we watch the Clearwater flows all the time, and Dorshak Dam is what controls that way up inside of Orofino. And so when you're watching the flows and you have a nice high flow, you know those fish are going to take that time to mill around in that nice pocket of water. But in the last 2 weeks, you can see the flows dropping 2 feet a week. And so what that tells me instantaneously is, yes, these fish, like we talked about in the first one, are moving fast up the river. We've been tracking them the whole entire way, so we know where these fish are. But now we have Dorshak Dam that's actually dropped the flow of the Clearwater, and that's going to tell me one thing. Once flows get low, if you're a fish and it's hot outside and that water starts to warm from being cool, what do you think you're going to do? Comment down below what you think a fish would do once the water starts getting lower, getting a little bit warmer. What do you think a fish is going to do? they are going to fly upriver. They are not going to stop in that nice pocket of cool water anymore. They are going to continuously travel upriver because that water is dropping. Fish are purely instinctual creatures. A lot of people like to think they're extremely stupid. But if I'm a fish, I'm swimming in 24 feet of water, I'm hanging out, 2 weeks later, it's 20 feet of water. I'm thinking, I got to get out of here before there's no water left, aka as well, the sun's beating down and this water's warming up where it was cool. I'm missing my opportunity to get to my spawning bed. I got to go right now. So flows not only affect how fast fish travel up the river system, they also affect these areas where normally fish would hang out and group up, where you can target these fish with a bunch of different methods, but instead they make the opposite decision and they continue on instead of hanging out because the flows drop, the water's warming up, so on and so forth. So flows add a major effect on how these fish are traveling, and it affects the Columbia River as well. Yes, the Columbia River is vast. It's got many tributaries. It's got many hatcheries to where a bunch of different Chinook, instinctually are traveling back to their spawning grounds. But if you have high flows on the river, those fish are more inclined to mill up the river than they are when there's extremely low flows. When those low flows are rolling, those fish are moving and grooving up the river system. And that's something I never really understood. I thought, okay, it's raining, it's pouring down rain, tons of mud, there's fish everywhere in the river, they just swim throughout the river system and that's it. There's different points throughout the river system in different times and different weather and different flows and all these things that allow you to better put yourself over top of the fish. These fish love to take the path of least resistance. When that water's high, you can bet these fish are fairly close to the bank in some river systems. Not all river systems, mainly not the Columbia River, because even when the flows are a little bit higher, those fish are still traveling up the river. And we all know the Columbia River is a massive river, so you're not going to be fishing directly on the bank like we would in the main Umpqua River. We used to target these fish a foot off the bank with higher flows, so on and so forth, but you do not run into that a whole lot in the fall. So the water's lower in the fall, but these dammed rivers, like the Clearwater River that's controlled by Dorshak Dam, like the Columbia River that's controlled by a ton of dams, flows throughout different areas could vary greatly depending on where you are at in the river system. And that also brings you back to number one, understanding where these fish actually are, simply because you can look at the flows as well as you can look at the dam counts, and you will understand if these fish are flying up the river system, if you need to change tactics, or if they're just milling up the river. But fall Chinook in general do kind of fly up the river system, only in comparison to the springers. Now that we got the number two thing that I wish I knew before fall Chinook fishing out of the way, let's talk about the third and final thing that I wish I knew before fall Chinook fishing. Many people will say that fishing in general comes from experience, and that is 100% accurate. But there's always new people entering the sport, entering the hobby, entering the lifelong passion of fishing, and so utilizing information that's readily available to you, like the internet, like YouTube, like videos, to understand and see where people are actually fishing at. It used to be back in the world before YouTube and before the internet that you had to have a guide out there to show you exactly what you needed to do. And I'm telling you, if you want to understand fully what you need to do, booking a guided trip would be an amazing place to start. They have all the knowledge. They've been doing it for a while. Even a new guide, if you get out there and you're successful and have a successful day, seeing what they're using, understanding the sense that they're putting in their tuna when they're running a tangled up brads like this one right here, or the Procure gel that they're throwing on their spinner blade when they're fishing it down at buoy 10, as well as tying up an egg loop knot when you're fishing near the Klickitat or up here at the confluence of the Clearwater and the Snake River. As you move up these river systems, different types and different styles of fishing come into play. As you move up from buoy 10 inside of the Columbia River and beyond, plunking becomes one of the primary methods for bank anglers. They fish wobblers, double wobblers, triple wobblers, spin glows, so on and so forth to catch these fish from the bank, as well as you move even farther up towards the Klickitat River outside of Hood River, they move into a hover fishing style method to where they're sitting over a hole, drifting eggs through the hole right up off the bottom. And so just from these 3 small examples in a couple 100-mile span of river, you've got 5 to 6, 7, 8 different types of fishing methods that people are using, and they transition out of one and move into another, and then move into another as they get up into these different parts of the river. Now, for the newcomer angler, you're going to think, wow, that sounds absolutely crazy and a little bit overwhelming. How do I understand, and where do I get this information? And from my experience outside of being a kid and having my Uncle Brad teach me all about fishing and doing some of my own fishing, YouTube, taking guided trips, researching on the internet, finding forums, as well as reading fishing reports of how people and where people are catching fish, as well as literally getting out there and going and trying it for yourself. The number 3 thing is understanding how and what to use and how to find the information to use it to be successful out there fall Chinook fishing. Because when I was young, I went out fishing all the time, not understanding what I needed to do, and I spent a lot of wasted days out there fishing some of the wrong gear. So the last and final thing, understanding what to use in what part of the river, is how I'm going to close this out. Super important to understand what to use where. I know that sounds super vague and like Captain Obvious, but get on the internet, book a guided trip, understand the fishery, go out there and experiment, put hours in, and utilize setups. And if you need to find any of these setups, you can go to my channel, Walking on Water, and you can look up multiple different parts of the Columbia, the Snake, the Clearwater River, and you will understand how to better fish some of these areas. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Walking on Water. You are going to be watching this video the day before I leave on my 7-day fishing trip. I have a ton of stuff planned to bring back and film while I'm there, and I cannot wait. I'm super excited. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this amazing channel. God bless you, and I will catch you in the next one.